In this episode, I'm going to talk about point number 2 of W. Edwards Deming's 14 points. Point number 2 is adopt the new philosophy. Now, with all these videos that I'm doing on Dr. Deming's 14 points, you'll be able to see I'll put a link in the description to a previous podcast that I did for the Deming Institute that features more of Dr. Deming's thinking on the 14 points. In these videos, I'm going to share more of my thoughts or what I've learned from these 14 points. And so point number 2, adopt the new philosophy. Now, there are many obstacles to organizations, especially those that produce products and services. And those obstacles were originally pointed out by Dr. Deming to how do we go about improving the American competitive position. So he talked about regulations. He talked about antitrust. Now, you may agree or disagree with him on that, but regulations certainly create barriers for businesses to be able to do things. We're seeing that here now with COVID and restaurants and things of that sort. And then antitrust has obviously been a big subject because of the social media giants that are out there and Google search and whether they're too big and need to be broken up. But the main thing that Dr. Deming was hitting on with Adopt the New Philosophy is that there are poor management and that the American management thought remained unchallenged from 1950 to 1968 until the Japanese started to eat our lunch because they were starting to make better automobiles, more fit for the American market, and took market share away from, at the time, the big three: Chrysler, Ford, General Motors. And so that was kind of the end of thinking that American management was something really special because it was surpassed. The theory that American management was great ended during that particular time period. So we had to come along and have new thinking. And Dr. Deming provided it. So the new philosophy, I have to kind of take you for the lesson that I get from point number 2 is American management, and a lot of the world has copied what the Americans have done. And so you could even say world management was born from the thinking of someone by the name of Frederick Taylor. And Taylorism, also referenced as scientific management. And his thinking prevailed in the United States for today, till today. People are still, and matter of fact, his thought process is still taught in American universities, sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. And this is the problem. And this is why I think American universities are really failing executive management. That Taylorism prevails today in some form, or some form that's been turned into something else over a period of years, but with still this kind of base thinking. So Dr. Deming was teaching something very different. Instead of scientific management, a lot of people reference it as scientific method. And like all methods, it's imperfect too, but it is more aligned with thinking that helps improve over time through learning. In other words, you hear me talk about decision making. Well, you have to not just make a decision, but you have to be able to pivot on it or scrap it or whatever. And a lot of scientific management led people down the path of that. Well, we've got the best way to do something now, and we can move on to something else. So scientific method is a huge difference, and the Deming philosophy in general, the differences are kind of night and day. And again, universities are not teaching much about the Deming philosophy. I'm not saying all universities, but certainly a majority of them. They're all based in Taylorism, or as some reference it as neo-Taylorism, which is a derivative of the original Taylorism, but kind of just puts you on the same bad path in essence. So all of my education is going to be steeped in scientific method, and a lot of it in the Deming philosophy, but I approach it very differently. So one of the things I want you to do is I want you to look for future videos where I am talking about the differences between Taylorism and the Deming philosophy, and the differences between scientific management and scientific method. Now, I'll put a link in the description because I have talked about this on the Deming Institute podcast. And so I'm going to link to that. Matter of fact, I did one just recently. So I'll link to that particular episode for you to be able to listen to while I get up to date here. I'm making videos of these 14 points. Again, if you want to listen to my thoughts about Dr. Deming's 14 points, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Hit the bell and you'll get notified of additional points being released here in the future.